Music creation today looks very different from the way it did even a decade ago. The idea of a band walking into a studio, recording a few takes, and releasing the result has largely been replaced by something far more experimental. Modern artists are working with digital tools, layered production techniques, and creative workflows that blur the line between writing, producing, and designing sound. In many ways, we're entering a new studio era, one where the boundaries of how music is created are constantly being rewritten. For a long time, popular music has been framed as a story of performers first and production second. Bands forming in garages, artists discovering their sound in real time, songs emerging from chemistry rather than construction. It's a compelling myth, but it's also incomplete. Music has always moved between two creative models, one driven by performance and one driven by the studio. What we're witnessing now isn't the disappearance of the first, it's the return of the second. The difference is that today the studio doesn't just capture sound, it helps build identity, narrative, and an entire creative world. In other words, we've entered a new studio era. In truth, the studio has always been more than a recording space. From orchestral halls to the Motown production system to late 20th century pop development pipelines, the studio has often been the real engine of music creation. Producers shaped sound palettes. Visual teams crafted imagery. Creative directors helped guide artist personas long before audiences heard the first single. In those moments, the studio wasn't documenting music. It was designing it. What changes across decades isn't whether this model exists. It's how visible it becomes. Sometimes the industry celebrates it. Other times it hides it behind the narrative of organic discovery. But the pattern remains. When music culture evolves, the studio returns to its role as a primary creative instrument. Today's tools simply make that role visible again. We're not just recording songs anymore. We're designing creative ecosystems. And while that may feel new, it isn't entirely different from what many influential artists and producers have done throughout music history. The difference now is that modern production environments allow sound, imagery, and narrative to develop at the same time instead of in separate stages. Music is no longer just written, then recorded, then marketed. It can now be conceived as a unified system from the very beginning. That shift changes the creative process in a few important ways. Sound becomes emotional architecture, not just composition. Visual identity develops alongside a defined sonic language. Themes and narrative ideas influence arrangement choices, and artist roles are shaped as part of a larger creative framework. Instead of songs being the starting point, they become one expression of a broader artistic structure. The result isn't less authenticity, it's a different kind of authorship, one based on intentional design rather than accidental cohesion. In earlier eras, an artist might develop a sound first and refine their identity later. In the studio-driven model, that order often reverses. Identity becomes the foundation, and the music grows from it. This approach isn't about control for its own sake. It's about coherence. When a project begins with a clear emotional core, a narrative logic, and a visual language, every creative decision gains direction. Songs reinforce one another. Imagery aligns with themes. Releases feel like chapters instead of isolated tracks. The work stops feeling like a collection of songs and starts feeling like a world. That shift is what defines the present moment. We're not just seeing new technology in music production. We're seeing a renewed focus on intentional creative architecture. At Contusion Records, the studio isn't treated as a place where finished music arrives. It's treated as the environment where identity, sound, and story evolve together. Projects don't begin with a release plan. They begin with a framework. What emotional territory does this artist inhabit? What visual language belongs to that world? What narrative threads shape its evolution? And how should the sound reflect those elements? From there, the music grows naturally out of those answers. This isn't about manufacturing artists. It's about recognizing that music has always been shaped by creative systems and choosing to build those systems deliberately instead of pretending they don't exist.